Good morning, everybody. I hope you're all well, and welcome to this Finance Indaba Network webinar hosted by Demargo this morning. We have a power panel lined up for you. So we'll just keep an eye on the audience that's coming in. We'll give them a couple of seconds. So if you're attending from number crunchers to data analysts, you're definitely in the right place. See the participant numbers are climbing, which is fantastic. We'll just give people a few more seconds to come through. So in today's webinar, we are going to have Capital CFO Sean Doherty, who's going to discuss the requirements that led him to engaging Dimago Data Analytics to deliver his required outcomes. We'll also hear from Dimago CEO Pierre Naude, and he will explain how technology can deliver on its transformation promise. And last but not least, from Roy Clark, MD of ClarkHouse Human Capital, who's going to share his lessons for building high-performance finance teams for organizations. So if I can invite the panel to come on screen. Here we go. Hi, gents, how are you?
Good, thanks.
Good, thanks. Morning, Tamara.
Hi, Sean. Hi, Roy.
Good morning, Tamara and the CFO community. Good to engage. Thanks for having us.
Perfect. So I think without further ado, as I mentioned, we have Sean Doherty from Capital. We have Pierre Naude from Dimago Data Analytics and Roy Clark from ClarkHouse Human Capital. And again, to the audience, thank you for joining. We'd really like this to be an engaging webinar. So please let us know, number one, who you are and where you're from, which organization you represent, and raise your questions. This panel has loads of insight, and I'm sure they'd love to answer any questions that you may have. So Pierre, I'm going to hand over to you and we can kick off, and we'll chat with you in a few minutes.
Thanks, Tamara. Just going to share my slides. So if they don't come up properly, just let me know.
I will. Okay, nothing as yet.
Yeah, getting there.
Okay.
There we go. It should be up now. Everything okay on your end? Let me just.
Yeah, that's perfect. You can just make it. There you go.
Cool. So thanks. Yeah, so just a little bit of an introduction to Demargo. We're a data analytics company that focuses on transforming teams and business through process automation and the adoption of advanced analytics. We work with mainly predominantly business teams, and a large majority of our clients are actually within the finance team or within the finance function. And after meeting, with hundreds of finance teams over the years, we've built a maturity model that helps highlight the challenges faced by people in business teams and the steps they can take to become data-driven in their organization and in their decision making. So I just wanted to introduce you to the different levels in this maturity model that we've built through our experience of dealing with finance and business teams. And just have a think about, while I go through the details of where you think you would position yourself and your team or even your organization. We'll be doing a poll at the end, and it'll be really interesting to see where you see yourselves in this maturity model. So we found that a lot of organizations, and where it really starts, is being data aware. And what does that mean in our terms? It means we see people with multiple systems, which means they're combining data from multiple different systems to create results for reporting and analysis, and this very often results in them being Excel heavy. It means the curation of data is slow, so that means the creation of reports or new data models is very slow. And from our experience, people can spend weeks of their months in Excel just preparing reports. And this is even after spending millions, and some of the large organizations spending billions on digital transformation. We still see huge amounts of Excel in organizations. Just some recent discussions we've heard of business teams, and specifically finance teams, spending anywhere from 60 to 90% of their time spent in Excel every month. And a couple of issues there is it doesn't leave teams with a lot of time to analyze the information, and it leaves people feeling disjointed and unengaged, unfulfilled and overworked, because they're doing kind of mundane processing work, which they weren't necessarily trained or educated to do. These are highly intelligent, educated people, and they want to add value to organizations, and doing this mundane processing work is challenging. So with people as your biggest asset, it's key to ensure that they feel that they're adding contributing success to the business. So that's what we start working with these people in business, and what we're trying to do is get them to be data savvy. And one of the first steps in the journey to becoming data driven is to obviously automate these Excel and these manual processes, and that's really where we start. We want to do that by firstly automating Excel processes. And I've been in finance systems, and I came from an audit background and went into finance systems quite early on in my career, and been doing it for about 15 years. And in all honesty, what I saw 15 years ago is still a lot of what I see today. I don't feel like there's been a lot of innovation in this space, and we feel that the systems are now there. I suppose the automation and the self-service systems are now available for people in business to actually start driving this change. So we approach this a little bit differently to typical organizations, typical consulting businesses, is that we actually want to upskill the people within the finance and business teams. So what we see is with these modern self-service capabilities is that the business teams can actually start delivering process automation and analytics themselves. So we call this the democratization of data and analytics, or the democratization of data access. And that finance teams and business people should really have the access to the data themselves, and be able to build these processes and be able to start driving some insights through analytics. And that's got many benefits. We hear often that teams are working and building specs, and they're handing that over IT or consulting teams to build that out. And owning that yourself and the business teams mean you can actually, you don't have to write those specs, and that you can actually build them out. So a lot of our processes are actually sitting directly with the team and just guiding them through how to build these things themselves in the self-service technologies. Time to delivery is significantly shorter. We can build out use cases in a matter of hours, and very often the time it takes us to build out a use case is actually less than the time it would take to build that use case out in Excel or something. And we can give some examples later. And it's very easy to scale. So when we see a self-service delivering significantly higher output, is that imagine giving the capability of an advanced developer or an advanced BI analyst to everybody in your finance team. It could be tens to hundreds of people that are now involved in actually delivering process automation analytics capabilities. So there's a much bigger output, and through this more entrenched engagement in data and the processing of data and information, we see a very big uptick in data literacy. And that means that business users can then start engaging with IT teams and start talking at a much, I suppose, higher level or much more tech savvy level and data savvy level with IT counterparts. IT teams are absolutely critical for maintaining those core and backend systems, and it's very important to partner with those teams. It's by no means that the business teams can run on their own. It's absolutely a partner and a cross-functional engagement. And we see this data savvy level being upskilled in data literacy, is that business teams can really have much better conversations with those technical teams. And ultimately, as we speak, the majority of organizations want to become data driven. One of the first questions we ask when we're engaging with teams is, if you could automate these processes, and let's say you've got 60 or 70% of your processes on Excel and you believe you can automate those, what do you want to do? Do you want to downsize your team, or do you actually want to repurpose that team to more value add? And pretty much all of them are, we want to add more value to organizations, and that's a thing. So this whole AI and automation is removing jobs. We don't see that. We see people wanting to add more value to the organizations, and how can we now do that? So with the platforms that we use, becoming data-driven is not easy, but it can happen a lot quicker than you think. And we can start piecing together different technology sets to look at hyper-automation. Now, hyper-automation is a combination of things like, robotics process automation and self-service technologies. We use a product called Alteryx that we'll get into a little bit. Combining these processes to build end-to-end hands-off data processes in the finance space. And more importantly, we really want to start looking at training business users as citizen data scientists. We're getting more and more feedback from customers that are starting to use Alteryx, that they're actually able to produce results. And one of our big banking clients gave us a very interesting one yesterday, actually. They did a customer churn model that was 98 to 99% as accurate as the churn models that were built by highly experienced data scientists within their data science team in Python. So because of that, they've realized that they don't necessarily need a very highly trained data scientist, that they can actually give their SMEs or their subject matter experts within their finance teams, given them the right technology and background around data science and advanced analytics, they can actually start doing this themselves, which is extremely interesting and what I'm most passionate about. There are too many questions to be asked within business around data to leave it isolated with a advanced analytics team. So this is the whole concept around a citizen data scientist and getting that those people in business actually trained up to be asking those questions. There was an interesting study done by MIT on university on how do we deliver the most value through data science to organizations. And there were 4 recommendations that they put forward, and 2 of those recommendations were use simple models and test more problems. And that drives directly into what we're saying is give as much of this capability to as many people in your business as you can, with the right governance and coaching around it. We feel the value that you can drive from that is just exponential. So this is our data process and maturity model. And it'll be very interesting to see where you rate yourselves, which we'll be going to into just now. So ultimately, we look at transforming both business and workplace outcomes. So business means top line growth, profitability, and also workplace outcomes, as in how do we enhance your teams and make them more efficient by connecting the 3 pillars of digital transformation, being data, process, and people. So we look heavily at process automation. How do we automate as many manual and mundane processes as we can? And then look, how do we actually democratize data analytics across your business teams and across your finance team? And at the core of our approach is really around upskilling people. We're not here to come and land a team of consultants and developers on site. We actually want to coach and enable your teams to deliver these kind of capabilities yourself. And we've seen this, and it's phenomenal what business teams have been able to do. Like I said, in the 15 years that I've been in finance systems, once we start engaging with the teams, I've never seen such transformation before. Just as one example, we spent 4 hours with one person in a shared services team and automated a process that usually takes them 12 hours a week. So in 4 hours, we automated 12 hours and effectively turned into 4 months of time saved, of work time for that one person within 4 hours in a year. So that's just the transformation that's available. That gives you another 4 months effectively in the year to start analyzing and unpacking insights around optimization, saving, and new potentially business opportunities. So that's kind of what we're seeing in organizations today, and it'd be great to hear where you see yourselves. So just a big thank you to Transactional Capital, to Sean from Transactional Capital, our client, to Roy from ClarkHouse. We partner with Roy on the recruitment side, and looking for the right kind of people to enable these transitions and skill sets. And a big thanks to Alteryx, one of our key partners in this automation and analytics space, an end-to-end analytics process automation platform that we're seeing incredible benefits from. So thanks to all of you.
Thanks, Pierre. That was great. I think let's do a quick poll and find out where the audience is sitting in terms of the maturity framework. So give me a second and I will launch the poll. So to the audience, if you think, where are you on the maturity framework? Level 1, you're data aware. Level 2, you're data savvy. Between 1 and 2, or level 3, data driven, or between level 2 and 3. So let's see how that goes. If you can all just give us your position. The more data we have, the more we can discuss it. Let me give it a few more seconds. Okay, I'm going to end the poll now. So Pierre, I don't know if you can see that. Quite interesting. It looks like the majority of the audience is sitting between level 1 and 2. Is that surprising?
And I think that's what we see a lot of. I mean, there have been significant investments in data and processing and process automation. So although I think we see a lot of processes in the data aware level. So if you look at individual processes, there are a number of processes, but taking an overall level, I think the majority of the people we're talking to are definitely between 1 and 2. But I think it just shows we've got 35, so there's 50, almost 60% of the users are basically between level 1 and 2. That shows how much opportunity there is to move up to data driven level 3. So there's a huge amount of work that can still be done. So it's interesting to see. Yeah.
And Pierre, I mean, to sort of elevate their skill set, is it a long learning process, or is it something that's quite easy to adapt to?
Yeah, I mean, not at all. With the modern self-service technologies and the solutions like Alteryx that we use, we can literally do this in a couple of hours. So that example that I gave earlier of working with the team for 4 hours and automating 12 hours of their process, we do something that's called guided workflow building. We'll actually just take them through step by step. So it's drag and drop, very easy to use. And like I said, the other example around the data science model, that wasn't a data scientist, it was a business person that used the technology to come up with a customer churn model. There's no need to understand Python or R. It's just really understanding what is the data I need and what questions do I want to ask of the data. And the technology can do the rest. Obviously, then unpacking that answer and that output is the critical thing. Is how do you then add value to the business? And that's where we feel the people with the business understanding are going to be able to apply it a lot easier in their environments. So, but yeah, we see within a couple of hours to weeks, people can actually start adopting these capabilities. So it's very quick.
Thanks so much, Pierre. And I think before we hand over to Sean, you can actually come on camera because there's a few more poll questions. And I think also there'll be some interesting answers here. Right, let's kick off with another poll. So poll 1. How many of you are involved in strategy formulation for your business and function? I am involved or I am not involved. Okay, it's moving quite aggressively, so it's quite interesting. Give it a few more seconds and we'll end it off. Okay, so that was quite a far win. So Sean, it looks like a majority of the audience are involved in the strategy formulation, which I'm sure is positive. I think before we discuss it, or do you want to discuss poll by poll?
No, I think do all of them tomorrow and then I'll comment at the end.
Okay, perfect. Next poll. How closely are your business and finance strategies aligned? So either they inform each other or the business strategy informs the finance function strategy. Pretty 50-50 at this stage. Give it a few more seconds. Right, I'm going to end that poll. So again, close, but there's a win. Business strategy informs the finance function strategy, sitting in at 58%. Okay, poll 3. In an ideal world, what component would you like to be involved in around strategy formulation? From design, from implementation, execution, all of the above, or absolutely none of the above? quite interesting on this one. Looks like we've got quite an eager audience, which is good news. I'm going to end that poll. So coming in at 70%, that like to be involved in the entire process. And then the last poll, does your business value finance when they formulate the strategy? Is that a yes or a no? Okay, that's good results. I'm going to end that poll. So 81% of the audience says that their business and organization do value them, which is great news. So Sean, I'm going to hand over to you. What are your thoughts around those polls?
Thanks, Tamara. So that last poll, just to start there, doesn't surprise me at all. I think if we had done that one pre-financial crisis, we would have seen the opposite result. I think post-financial crisis or through the financial crisis, business leaders, CEOs, marketers, et cetera, realized the importance of balance sheets and therefore the finance functions. And that trend doesn't surprise me. All I wanted to say on those polls, though, is there is no right or wrong. It is all a choice. Strategy has to happen. It has to get designed. It has to get executed. Where you want your finance team, finance function, or yourself personally to land really is a matter of choice. And depending on what that choice is, you're going to do some of what Pierre sort of mentioned. You probably will automate. If you automate and you have decided as a finance function, you would want to be saving costs, you'll get rid of jobs. I think most of us aren't in that world. If you're not in that world, you'll sort of automate. You'll then use that automation to allow your people to create insights. And then ultimately, I imagine you'll use that insight and some of the tools that Pierre was talking about to create predictive insights. I mean, everyone's talking about AI and the like, but I guess that's sort of where it goes. So transaction capital, that's sort of where we are trying to go. What we're trying to do as a finance team and a finance function is we're trying to take the eventing out of finance. And I'll explain that a little bit later in terms of how I think about strategy as well, because I think it's important. So I don't understand in this world why you have a month end, why we have a half year end, why you have a audit, why you have a budget as an event. Like these things should be continuous because we have enough data, we have enough tools, and we have enough brain power to make them continuous. So that's the journey we are moving on. And the one thing I would sort of mention to, I guess, finance professionals is this is happening in organizations. So again, if I look at transaction capital, are we a data-driven organization which makes strategic and operational decisions every day on data? Absolutely. And I'm pretty sure every organization out there is. I guess, again, the choice of finance people and finance teams is, do you want to be part of that or not? There's a great quote which says something like, if you're not moving at least as fast as the world, you're falling behind. And I think you can apply that to organizations as well. And again, some organizations, I think finance either explicitly or implicitly have made the choice to fall behind and be and sort of be bookkeepers, which again is not wrong. It's just a choice. So again, how do we think about strategy first? I'm just going to pull up a whiteboard, and then how does that sort of filter into our engagement? I guess with people like Pierre and the tool sets that he uses. And the reason I put this on is because I think it's important, because you can't play everywhere, and you can't play everywhere immediately, in my view. So if I just think of sort of very, very basic concept or assumption. So my assumption at work is we are here to make money and be profitable, which is not everybody's sort of start off point. We are here to do that in a sustainable and repeatable way. And I don't mean about sustainability in terms of ESG when I talk about that. It is just quality of earnings, which are not one-off. You can do it again and again and again. And again, more from an emerging market perspective, but I see it's gaining sort of pace around the world, is we need to be doing that in a socially responsible way. So that's sort of our start off point. And then how do we think about strategy within that? So we do a number of things on a daily basis. The first thing we do is learn how to spell, but the second thing we do is we learn. So what does that mean? Like in a traditional strategy function, you would conduct some kind of situation analysis. Is this an opportunity? And what is the size of that opportunity? Then as you sort of move along, you start to say, how do you focus on that opportunity? So, you know, I am transaction capital. There are all sorts of opportunities out there in South Africa and globally, which are very, very interesting. But what are my sort of skill sets, and what strategic choices am I going to make that massive, massive opportunity an opportunity that I can digest and I can make money on, which is sustainable and repeatable and which is socially responsible? Then you sort of move that on and you say, okay, now I know what my focus area is. And now how am I going to align my organization, my teams, my people behind that? And this is where I guess normal management frameworks arrive. And again, the way I think about it is there is a way to measure. So what are your metrics? Depending on what those metrics are, how are you going to reward against those? What processes and structures do you need in place to make sure that you can govern sort of all of this? What people do you need in your organization to take advantage of this opportunity we spoke about over here? And what culture do you need to do that? So all of this obviously is underlined and underpinned on a foundation of good governance, of good ethics, et cetera, et cetera. Then you move on to what is probably the hardest thing in strategy to do, is execute. Now, most companies do that and do that probably once a year. I think what I'm seeing more and more of, which goes back to my point around continuous finance, is that this cycle actually happens every single day, every month, every week, every transaction that you enter into. And if you are an organization that has an ability to do this piece better than most, learn faster than most, you will be successful, is sort of my thesis. So I think it's important to understand how your organization look at and think about strategy. So that's the first thing. The second thing is we are now in a digital world. So a lot of functions and a lot of companies, or a lot of companies, I should say, have a function called digital. Again, my thesis is that really is not correct. Digital is a strategy in and of itself. Well, digital underpins the strategy I've just spoken about. So what are the lenses that we think of when we think of digital? Because they are slightly different in a digital world to what they are in a physical world. So first thing is, what lens do you look at your customers through? So is your customer a mass market, passive bunch of customers who you just engage with, take a pick, a billboard, an advert that gets pushed out? Or do you think of customers as dynamic networks? And within those dynamic networks, there are influencers who you are targeting. They are quite different in a digital and a physical world. How do you think of value in a digital world? So we're seeing multiples being generated these days on top line. We're seeing multiples being generated these days on number of customers. South Africa still have a fairly, I guess, traditional way of looking at value in terms of price of PE ratios. And maybe that's right and maybe that's wrong. But if you ask yourself about Tesla, like what do Tesla do and how do they create value? Are they a car manufacturer? Are they an energy company? Are they in the business of producing batteries? It's a little bit different to what it used to be. Companies aren't necessarily creating value through a mono line anymore. Then third is this concept of innovation. So everybody talks about it, but what does it mean in a digital world? And in my mind, it just means take small bets often. And I really don't think it's more difficult than that. By taking small bets, you de-risk yourself. No, I think it is relatively simple. Competition. What does competition actually look like today in a digital world? Am I, as transaction capital, competing with the banks? Am I, as transaction capital, competing with Amazon? are Amazon competing with me? I think what we are starting to see is this concept of asymmetric competitors. So competitors who used to look like a retailer competing in financial services and vice versa. We're also starting to see the concept of co-opetition. So you don't have to win every battle. Sometimes you can compete and sometimes you can be friends. So that is different to potentially what it was a few years ago. And then lastly, I'll say second last, is this concept of data. So everybody talks about monetizing data. They talk about data as a strategic asset, et cetera, and I think that is absolutely right. We have to be thinking of data in the past, where it was a process, to now it is an asset. And how do you protect and monetize that asset? Monetize that asset does not necessarily, in my view, look like selling it to somebody. And again, I'll use a transaction capital example. The reason we are able to finance taxis in our SA taxi business is because we have very, very clever data. So we have 20 years of telematics data, which gives us a forward view of routes which taxis do drive on. We understand the profitability of each of those routes. And therefore, when somebody with no credit history comes to us, we can price them forward because we have the data. Not only can we price them forward, but we can sort of follow them around and make sure, one, where our asset is at all times, and two, we can collect the right amount of money from them in a month. So where a normal bank would lend you 100 Rand and you pay that off over 5 years at whatever that might be, call it 1 Rand a month, we would do the same. But in a month that you're very, very busy, we might collect 2 Rand from you. And in a month when you're not, we'd collect naught, because we have the data to look after our clients. And then I think you look at that, obviously, through an employee lens. And this comes back to Pierre's point around most people he speaks to, and I'll put this, I'll put transaction capital in this bucket. One, to create space and create capacity for what are a highly intelligent sort of bunch of people sitting in a finance function or looking to add value. So important to ask those questions and to draw the links into how you think about strategy and what you want to analyze. So as a finance function, you know, we did that poll, and people were saying they would like to look at all of these. And maybe that is right, and maybe that is wrong. My sense is most of us, despite saying that we do play and we are involved in all of these 70% of the time, a lot of what we do is come up with metrics and measure those metrics once a month. I think a lot of us are very, very involved in looking at processes and structures, and we look at them relatively often. Nothing wrong with that. We obviously would be involved in how you reward, but all of that is around aligning the organization. I think there are opportunities for finance people to be more involved over here and to be more involved over here. I absolutely think the game changer is how you learn continuously. And that, to me, is really the power of doing things continuously, and the power of being lucky enough, I think, at the moment to be in a finance function where we see so much data. So I think there's no other desk, for want of a better word, in a company which sees as much. You could argue the CEO will see more because he may see individual people's reward with human capital. But other than that, finance professionals are sitting on every single piece of data in an organization. I guess the question is taking your knowledge of the business, which is never going to go away, and taking the data that is swarming around us in various guises, social media or otherwise. How do you pull that together so that you can contribute to this circle the whole time? And again, in my mind, this is not an event. This is contributing to this every single day in every conversation you have in the corridors, because that's really how things work, definitely in organizations I've worked in. So Tamara, I'll stop there, and I don't know if people have questions, or Pierre and or Roy want to comment as I try to get myself off this.
Well, nothing's come through from the audience yet. So audience, please, if you've got any queries, any questions, please put them in the chat. We'll definitely get to them. But in the meantime, Sean, what are the impacts that you're seeing from this transformation?
So I think it all goes back to human, Tamara, and Pierre mentioned it in his assessment. You just have people who are more engaged, more interested because they're adding more value and doing more interesting things, and that's, in my mind, is huge. Again, like just to quote two stats: productivity in the developed world over the last 50 years has gone one way. And the irony is it's gone down. You would think it would be the opposite, given all the technological advances we've had, but it hasn't. Employee engagement has done exactly the same over the last 50 to 60 years. I'm unsure if there's a correlation, but my sense is there would be a correlation. A normal organization in South Africa, if you look at Towers Watson stats, says that 25% of employees are actively engaged, 25% of employees are actively disengaged, so actually trying to do the opposite of what the CEO and management team are trying to do, and 50% are not bothered. So effectively, we have workforces in SA. It's not massively different in places like the UK and the US, where 75% of your workforce are either not engaged or actively disengaged. So I think by doing this sort of stuff, you're sitting on a sort of a hidden resource, which is massive. It is massive. But again, we are relatively early in our journey, but we're also very lucky, tomorrow, that we are in a business which is a data business. It is a technology business, and everybody inside of it understands the value of that, which is not the case for everybody.
Yeah, scary stats.
Yeah,
and
sorry, yeah, just on the impact. I mean, and what Sean was saying about people is that we see people getting excited again. Like if you can reduce the amount of mundane process by 4 months in a year, that gets people excited about what they're doing and excited about actually adding value and the potential of what they can do in their organization. And then just on what the impacts on in stats possibly. I mean, people can close faster. So close, Sean's been talking about close and continuous auditing, continuous processing, and we absolutely agree with that. But I mean, just on looking to close, you can close 50% faster if you're transforming the way we are. You can operate at a 42% lower cost. Be more trustworthy. So your reporting accuracy up by 9%. And I think most importantly, where it's a soft number, it's difficult to gauge, but being able to dedicate almost 38% more resources to financial planning and analysis and less resources on transactional work, that's a huge amount of potential gain. Now, this analysis and data science and analytics, it's a testing process. It's not something you're going to find a result of on the first time. So there's a lot of work and time that needs to be spent on testing different models and asking different questions. But the reward is there. I mean, we spoke to recently, one of our large clients, and they estimated in one of the processes that they built out, $100 million saving potentially. So those are the kind of numbers that you can come up with if you start looking at these things. So that's the transformation we want to look at, not just how many hours you're going to save, but what are you actually going to do with those hours once you've saved them.
Yeah, I mean, Pierre, just to add to that, and I know Roy obviously wants to start now, but Pierre, tomorrow, if you think of a concept of testing, and this is where, again, in my experience, corporate South Africa have a little bit to learn, and that's just because of, again, my experience, the sort of people we have in finance teams, in some of these more analytical teams, who do tend to be CAs, who do tend to be lawyers. So we've all understood over the last year how science works, I imagine. I don't think everybody understood that 18 months ago. So science is exactly what Pierre mentioned. You have a hypothesis, you test it, 99% of the time it's wrong. You learn something from that answer and you go again. Again, me being an accountant, I want it to be 100% right all the time. That's not how science works, and that's not how business science therefore works. You have to ask the right question, knowing that your answer is probably going to be wrong 90% of the time. But as you keep doing that and keep learning, that's the power in my mind. It's the continuous learning, and a learning organization is an organization which will always be more powerful than another one.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Sean. I think we've heard all about the technical aspects. I'd love now to move over to Roy, where we hear about the human element. So Roy, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Tamara. And a great place to leave off where Sean was talking about engagement, because, you know, as much as you can digitize and technologize, and as much as we've had the fastest shift in workplace strategies in the history of mankind, where the way we work, the way we manage, you know, even given post-COVID or this COVID pandemic, you know, things are changing so rapidly. So, you know, it's such an important thing to pick up on. And I'm going to focus a little bit more on the human capital element. I'm aware of time, so I'm just going to rinse through a couple of concepts. I'm not going to bring up any slides or anything. And what I really want to do is touch on kind of some research that I did many years ago when we did a talk at the Financing Derby, actually, around the future of finance and how this has kind of changed, and what are the kind of concepts, and what are the, you know, what hasn't changed. I'm also going to kind of touch on a couple of fears. You know, people are very fearful of technology. Will it lead to job losses, et cetera, et cetera. And one thing I also want to touch on that Sean talked about around strategy was core purpose of finance. I'm going to try and unpack what are the new skills needed for this new playbook of finance that I called. You know, what are these new kind of roles? What new roles are we seeing as a business? We work a lot with finance divisions. And then how are you going to hire going forward? Like, how are you going to get these skills in? And then I really want to touch on, lastly, what does this mean for leadership? So I'm going to keep it quite, you know, quite casual and, you know, very high level. So just bear with me. I think many years we conducted this research where we interviewed numerous CFOs, numerous financial directors, and we kind of asked this question: what are the issues facing you? And these haven't changed much. They talk around staff workload, resistance to change, talent management, digital fitness and adequacy, and competence requirements. Those are all human capital, you know, elements that we need to talk about. We talked about productivity and how people are burnt and worked out, that kind of stuff. So, and it brings me back to this kind of old finance playbook that, you know, a lot of companies are still playing in. There is a slight shift to becoming more digital and a bit more efficient, but the reality is what we have, and Sean talked about this choice. You can either be the keepers of the score, as I put it, which is the old playbook, or you can possibly move to what I call as the new playbook, which is maybe being the coach of the high performance team, of the premiership team of finance. I think the old playbook talks about, you know, best practices and copycat functions and doing things we did the same way 10 years ago. I recently heard of an example where a company they're on their 28th version of budgets in spreadsheets, and they actually don't even know which ones they're working with. And the human error there is that. So it's, you know, it does make the finance function adequate, but is it effective and efficient? And the answer is probably not. So I think we need to look at what automation can bring to this and where you're spending your time. As Pierre mentioned, a lot of people are spending up to 50% of their time just on financial operations and transactional processes. Things like, you know, financial reporting, compliance, you know, another 30%. So the actual insights, the actual opportunity to add the value that you have been hired to do is really so minimal that you're not actually adding that value. And that's where that engagement score starts dropping, where Sean spoke about it. So automation is not going to make jobs redundant. It's going to make skills redundant. And that's the exciting thing. I think, you know, the job losses due to skills redundancy should not be viewed as doom and gloom, but more of an opportunity for people to step up and to be able to play a much better game within that finance function. It's an opportunity, and Sean talked about that human aspect. Humans to assume a greater, more strategic role with the refocus of building finance's core purpose. And when we did a poll and our research with all these financial directors and CFOs, two key components came out. Core purpose in finance needs to be trust, first and foremost, and value add. But I think the reality is we're in a perfect storm at the moment. Digital transformation, pre-COVID, post-COVID, you know, COVID leadership, all this kind of stuff. But what we're finding is in any digital transformation, and Pierre made mention to it where he talks about self-service technologies, and a lot of digital transformation strategies fail. We find 73% of organizations fail to provide any business values through their digital transformation. No value at all. 78% fail to meet their business objectives anyway. And we also have a situation where 92% of organizations are not even correctly structured to operate in this new environment. So it's kind of like you're this old second or third division soccer team, and you're trying to go now play in the premiership, but none of your structures have changed. It's never going to work. And a lot of these need a whole new talent base to compete. So we need to move to what I call is this new playbook, that choice from the old playbook to the new playbook, from adequate, reliable execution of support costs to more business partner for continuous improvement. Finance leaders focus on what matters to organizations, and you need to be viewed as that creator and contributor of value. Insight and foresight, that's the key. Hindsight is a given now. That's kind of, that box needs to be ticked. Where you're providing influence, impact as well. I think we need to flip how people spend their time. Up to 50% of people's time need to be spent on insights and financial performance, the analytics, adding true value. And that comes from engaging and using technologies that Pierre spoke about. Unfortunately, we find people are still playing in the old playbook. I think we need to create where we're getting more value with more data. We've got to be developing more ecosystems. Sean told us about that. And that's how teams can learn off that. And that's that increased speed of learning and where divisions or whatever can organize for optimal adaptation. So I think when finance get this right, it's going to make anything possible within organizations. So I get asked a lot of questions like, so Roy, what are the new skills that we need to hire into finance functions? And I think the reality is a lot of people hire still on traditional methods, technical, which is not a bad thing, but it's beyond that now. It's around complex problem solving. Emotional intelligence is a big one. Judgment and decision-making, people management, negotiating skills, cognitive flexibility, creativity is a big one, empathy. And I think for me, another big one is the learning agility for people. If you are not hiring people who have the ability to learn, unlearn, and relearn, that continuous learning that Sean mentioned, that's where you're failing. Business acumen, obviously outside of finance, understanding how operations work, marketing work. A big one for me, and I think is very exciting, is hiring people who can storytell, tell the story of finance. Gone are the days, in my mind, of big fat board packs that are dumped or reports, monthly reports that tell people nothing. I've heard of stories where people get the board pack or the monthly budget pack and drop it in a bin. It's just printing paper. And again, another big skill and attribute is people who are very, very tech savvy. Some of the, I'm aware of time, some of the kind of new roles that we're seeing come out in finance are things like business growth partners. And these are people who act as a bridge between finance and business and markets and focus on delivering outcomes. We've got people called global process owners, and that's the end-to-end ownership process with the emphasis on process design, standardization within finance, and that technology implementation. We also have data scientists that are being hired and analytics and value managers. Those are people who are responsible for leveraging cross-functional and business data to inform strategic and domain-specific decisions. So there's a new world of what these things, transformation leads of people that we hiring into storytellers, marketing people into finance. So there's a whole new way of looking at things. The way we hire is also changing. COVID has taught us two big things. Work where you have permanent employment as a safety net is no longer the case. And what we're finding is that companies are creating smaller, permanent, skilled people in their team. And what they're doing is they're hiring out to people who are freelancers. And I call it the rise of the freelance or gig economy. And this is where you can turn expertise on or expertise off. And you have this expertise whenever you need it, but it's not sitting on your balance sheet. And you can literally tap into this new talent wave. So I think that's something that really, really needs to be explored within the finance. And we're finding a lot of people are actually upskilling when they need to during busy periods and then being able to switch that off. And I think that's something quite interesting. There's a unique company called Project CUDA that is a freelance business that's really, really doing some good stuff in matching high professionals to finance CFOs who need to upskill those kind of things. I want to touch a little bit before I end off, and I'm going to keep it very short, but in this, Sean talked about digital transformation. I've got this aspect around what does this mean for leadership in finance? And as much as digital transformation is synonymous with technology, agile systems, tech cloud, all the kind of buzzwords that we throw around, the real question that I think needs to be answered is, will the real leadership in finance stand up? And I know that's a very bold statement. I think the age of digital transformation is currently completely changing the way we work and manage people, and it's changing faster than we think. And it's completely exposed a leadership vacuum in my mind. And if I'm offending anyone, I do apologize, but this is the research that is telling us. What we're finding is that people are standing back. They're defending to win. They're doing things the way they've always done things. And this is creating this problem where digital transformation initiatives fail or they don't hire the right people. So why is nothing changing? Why do we have leaders that are sitting like rabbits in headlights? It's just too much business as usual, our research shows us, as people play it safe. I mean, and this is not only in finance, it's also in HR, it's also in marketing. And business leaders are sticking to the known rules of survival. And it's hard to blame them, but this is short-term thinking. And this is why it's imperative people need to get on this transformation change. So I think for me, to sum up, there's a complete partnership between human technologies, but the human element is more important than ever. Being able to allow people to add that only human value that is so important. New skills are needed in all areas of business. We get this. It's how you source those. Leadership is more important than ever. From moving from that efficient, reliable execution of tasks to really that partnership for continuous improvement that we've mentioned. RPA will replace millions of roles, but what it will do is it'll create a new platform for people to add more value. And I actually think it'll make more roles. And I think talent access will become something. It used to be called the war on talent. It's now going to just be around talent access. And I think that's something to really consider. I think leadership needs to be brave and try fail. Sean talks about innovation being, taking small bets. And I'm going to sum up quickly, but I remember watching a movie called First Man, where Ryan Gosling, I think he plays Neil Armstrong, and he's practicing landing the moon lander on Earth, and he has to eject before it explodes. And one of his colleagues runs over to him after he's landed in his parachute and says, you've got to stop doing this before you kill yourself. And he replies saying, we need to fail down here so we don't fail up there, pointing to the moon. I mean, it's pretty chilling stuff. And I know, most finance functions aren't flying to the moon, but I think we need to push the envelope all the time. We need to start having vulnerable leadership where people can look at creating adaptability to change, to have hard conversations, feedback, problem solving, ethical decision making, resilience, and those kind of things. And I think when we have vulnerable leadership, that's when the magic is going to take place. The small bets Sean talks about, I talk about start with 1%. And I'm not saying bet the family farm on everything, but bottom line is you need to start somewhere. Start 1% every day, changing small things, moving away from your big Excel spreadsheets. Lastly, I want to talk about culture just before we go on. I think culture is so important in this, where we could taking people on change. And I want to leave you with this. It's a guy called Stan Slapp, who I've worked with out of the United States. He's a world-class author. And he talks about it is the responsibility of your business to understand the culture logic, not the responsibility of your culture to understand the business logic. And what we need to do is we need to give our staff context to why we're digitally transforming, because that'll help it not fail in the future. Why do our employees really need to understand? What do they need to understand? What are these big plans? We also need to give them predictability. What will happen next? And spend time unpacking this. And then we need to give people a sense of self. What will this mean to your role? It'll mean more engagement, more opportunity for you to embed value. Lastly, I just want to end off with what I think leadership needs to do to step up. And that is a facilitated style of interpersonal leadership in a learning environment, concerned with adaptive problem solving and continuous improvement, in which humility, not knowing all the answers, delivers strength. And tomorrow I'm going to end it off there because I think we're running out of time.
Perfect, Roy. Thanks so much. I see our audience is very quiet. No questions have been raised. So either you've articulated your sessions incredibly well, or they're just incredibly shy. So if I can maybe ask the panel to come back on camera, and if you've got any final thoughts that you'd like to wrap up, or maybe even comment on Roy's session now.
Hi, Tamara. Yeah, I like that the idea around skills transfer. So not necessarily jobs being lost, but skills being lost. I think Excel skills need to be thrown in the bin and advanced to more intelligent ways of thinking. There's just too much time being wasted in that. Let's unlearn those skills and learn the new skills that are going to be adding more value to businesses, I think.
Yeah, and then I mean, Roy always makes such interesting points. Roy, the two skills, I guess I would add to your list is, I don't know how you test for this, but one is curiosity, which is obviously not something we used to hire for. And I think what COVID has taught us again is an ability to deal with uncertainty is actually the skill that we need. I think we were already in an uncertain world. We're now in a properly uncertain world. And I've always been told that I've got a young son, and I've always been told by a lot of people from places like Silicon Valley and stuff that the only thing you can really teach them is to deal with uncertainty. And I think that's also is going to be critical.
I see somebody has raised a question here. Joy Sykes is saying the skill level sits in Excel. What is the suggested replacement?
Yeah, so as we were mentioning earlier, we use in Demargo, we use a product called Alteryx, which is, it moves from processing and task processing and redoing things in Excel. So in Excel, you have to redo processes every time you process data, and you have to do it over and over again. So a repeatable process that you need to do every day or every week or every month. And we build those into workflows in a drag and drop environment. So it's understanding how the data needs to get processed is very important. And it's building that into a repeatable process that you no longer have to do. So like I said, we see processes taking hours and hours, even days, that we can automate, that you automate it once, the next time you do it, you just need to click a button rather than having to run through all those steps, run a VLOOKUP, add some columns, add some formulas. So there are most definitely Excel replacements in a data process and analytics space. Absolutely, there are replacements that we see. Yeah, Alteryx is one. I think there are only 50 million odd Excel users globally, and that's kind of Alteryx's position is to replace all of those with Alteryx. So there's a huge number of people that are doing this today, but there are opportunities to replace it and look forward.
Great. Thanks so much, Pierre. Joy, I hope that answers your question. And then there's another question that came through from Donald Elliott. What tools do you use to collate your data?
So that's, I mean, collate data. So I assume you mean bringing together, so joining and blending information together. So that's what we use Alteryx for. We can connect to multiple different systems, pull that data in, and then do data profiling, data quality processes, all those kind of things within Alteryx. And we actually coach our finance teams and business users to do that themselves. Obviously, the more complex processes, and in the beginning, there's some coaching and enablement that needs to happen. It's not like you can pick up Excel on day one and going to be able to use it very proficiently. So there's a process of enablement and assistance and actually building out these processes to reduce the amount of time they spend in Excel every month. But as we do more, they have more time. Finance people have more time, so then they get more skilled. But yeah, we use that product to collate data and then output that back into whatever format, whether that's back into into your ERP systems or into your reporting tools like Power BI or Tableau. So we use Alteryx to collate that information.
Perfect. So we've got 2 minutes left, but another question's come through. How long does it take for the data migration to take place? Does it depend on the size of the organization?
So data migration, I mean, that's quite a big term. It could be data migration, could be in an ERP context, or it could be just moving away from an Excel process to a more automated process. So like I mentioned before, we've spent an hour with a team and automated one of their processes. We spent very often in our first hour engagement, we'll actually automate a large portion or the whole process that they've done, up to spending a couple of hours and automating a few days in a week or month. So it's a matter of hours, not days, that we actually build out these processes. And I think we spent about 24 odd, maybe 30 hours with a recent client, and we built out 3 different processes for them. Things like consolidation of debtors books, commission calculations, automation of commission calculations, and this is across around 30 odd entities that we're pulling together and consolidating information on. And it took us a matter of days literally to automate those.
Perfect. Thanks. I see some more questions are coming through, but we are almost out of time. Alex, I have seen your question. I'm actually in discussions with Alex, so I will send that question and connect you to Pierre. So thank you to the audience for attending the webinar. Thank you to the panel, Sean, Roy, and Pierre. It's been absolutely insightful. I think the audience has learned quite a lot. If anybody would like to get in touch with the panel, please reach out to me and I will connect you. So once again, thank you for your time. And just coming up in the next few weeks, the presentations or the webinars that are coming up is Financing Work from Home, brought to you by SAP Concur. And then Sage Insights, the 2021 budget. So that's a hot topic at the moment. So please do join us and go on over to our website and register for these up and coming webinars. And hopefully we'll see you all soon. Thanks, everybody. Keep well.
Thank you.
Thanks, Demargo. Cheers, guys.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, tomorrow. Roy, Sean. Cheers, everyone.
Bye.